Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Neural Magic Podcast. Each week, we explore one aspect of what makes your brain magical, how we set intentions, cast powerful spells, and use ritual to manifest. Last week, we had a different kind of episode, but in an earlier episode, I spoke about grounding the brain and moving into a space of transcendence using movement and whirling. So, in today's episode, I'm going to kind of talk more about herbs and incenses and aromatics and how that can transport and set our frame of mind for magic. So, let's explore our magical brains together. When I think about rituals in our house when we were growing up, a lot of it revolves around incenses and all the different herbs that were burnt. Even today, my mom burns this herb called sambrani, which for a long time I didn't know what the name for it was in English. But now I've realized it's kind of a benzoin resin. And so there's a little, almost like a charcoal burner. There is charcoal on it, and then they put this resin and they burn it. And then the smoke wafts up, and it's this really thick, almost sweet smell that comes out of it. It wafts around, and it's supposed to both remove bad juju on some level and also kind of chase away physical, like beetles and other kinds of insect that could be there. And almost every Friday, as a ritual practice, this kind of thing was kind of rolled around the house in different corners. And part of our job as kids was to kind of wave this around in different rooms. And so whenever I smell that, I'm immediately transported to that kind of a ritual in our house. And aside from that, almost pretty much every prayer, every puja in the house ended with this camphor lighting of camphor, which is again a very potent aromatic, and it almost clears the air and clears the senses. And when I smell camphor burning, I almost get a sense of completion of the ritual, that something is coming to an end. And I almost feels this wholeness, as if there's a completeness is kind of felt. This kind of smell almost is something we experience not just in homes, but also in temples. And so it evokes the sense of sacredness in a particular space whenever I particularly smell it. This kind of use of aromatics and herbs in rituals is practiced across different cultures. We anoint kids when they're born with oils, or you burn incense sticks, or myrrh uh, and even in churches, there are these elaborate rituals involving incenses. Sometimes you don't even burn them. You just like decorate different areas around a particular altar or on the way to a particular sacrifice with all kinds of plants and herbs to kind of set the mood, set the stage. So the mind is kind of moved into this realm of magic. So, how does that happen? How do these plants have this potency to evoke different sensations within us almost immediately? The chemicals released from these herbs, either by burning or directly smelling them, are kind of going up your nose into your olfactory bulbs. So, they're directly affecting your olfactory bulbs. And from there, they reach a couple of different parts of the brain. One of them is the hypothalamus pituitary, which is the main controller of your hormones and your immune system, and also your autonomic nervous system. The whole body responses where you can dilate your pupils, your change your heart rate, change your breathing capacity, and all of that, or clenching of muscles. And so that is all under the control of the hypothalamic system and the autonomic nervous system. And for example, I have this almost visceral reaction to chamomile. A lot of people really like that particular smell, and they think it's a very calming smell for them. For me, chamomile just smells like death, and I have no idea why. But as soon as I smell it, my face automatically goes into a rictus. I kind of express my disgust with that particular smell. And that's because my hypothalamus is probably activating certain autonomic responses, which is kind of showing up on my face. And I'm also probably like kind of causing this withdrawal to happen when I smell that particular thing. Similarly, there might be some smells that trigger alarms and make you almost want to jump out of a particular situation. And All of this is coming from that particular the fact that the olfactory bulb is sending information directly to those regions of the brain, controlling your hormonal systems, your immune reactions, and also your stress responses. The other area of the brain that the olfactory bulb sends information to is your amygdala and the hippocampus, which are your emotion and your memory centers. And this is one reason why we are almost, even if you smell something after many, 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 many years, you're almost transported back in time. You can kind of visualize where you first experienced that, and which is why rituals that involve smells will become way more powerful, because you're kind of imprinting that thing, that this scenario set by the smell, it means this to me. And that's why, when we light candles, when we are trying to set the mood for even like having a party or having a quiet night at home with your loved one or something like that, so you kind of can set the stage for that. It is a form of magic too, right? When you're setting a stage for something like that, and or when you want to have that calming magic in your bathroom, and you're putting petals of flowers or lavender in your bath on a particular bath bomb, or lighting a scented candle. Again, you're kind of creating that calming influence by targeting your emotional and memory centers over there. So all of this is setting the kind of the tone for the magical ceremony. And what they found is smelling something is going to trigger reactions in you almost 20 minutes faster than actually if you ingest something or you consume something, because by the time you take something in, and you get digested, and then it's taken into your bloodstream and then transported to your brain, it's going to take about 20 minutes, as opposed to smelling something and it directly is influencing what's going on inside. The final area of the brain that's important here is the orbitofrontal cortex. That's kind of your current emotional state. So all of these are influencing your current state. So based on what you smell, are you going to react to that particular smell with calmness, with excitement, with feeling enthralled, being grounded? So all of these are kind of going to go into that particular kind of right in front over there, that area of the brain. So there are different kinds of herbs, and many of them have been recorded to have different effects. And there's also some scientific literature behind what people call old wives' tales about this. And there's a really interesting book called The Essence of Tarot, which has been re-released by Mary Greer, who's a giant in the tarot field. And the book, The Essence of Tarot, deals a lot with herbs used in magical practices and their correspondences with the tarot cards, and also how she's done some really great research on how it's perceived in the scientific world and how it affects the brain. And for example, lavender is used in cleansing, and what they found is it might have some effects on serotonin receptors or serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So, which is what people target when they're using antidepressants. Normally, what happens is we have a neuron, and which is releasing chemicals onto another neuron, and this is in this case is serotonin. It's kind of, you can kind of think of it as a happy chemical. And so for some of us, the amount of serotonin that's being released is not enough, and so when that amount of chemical is not being released, is not enough, that might lead to depression. So one way in which this is treated is by making sure that the amount of serotonin that's released kind of remains in that space for longer, so this neuron can get more of the activation from that extra release, extra time it's spending in this gap between the two neurons. And so to allow for that extra time, we are we are kind of blocking the reuptake of the serotonin. So once it's released, after some time, it sucks it back up using some kind of like vacuums or pumps you can think about. And so to kind of block those pumps for a little bit, that way the happy chemical can stay in this little gap for a little bit longer, allowing for this neuron to get excited for a little bit more. And that's what the reuptake pumps do. And so if you inhibit those pumps, you can kind of allow the serotonin to be in there longer. And so they think that the lavender could have some similar function to that by blocking that particular effect of. So there are herbs and And there is some scientific evidence that there might be some actual evidence of how the herb is used in magical practice might actually have a scientific parlance associated as to why it's being used in a particular way. For example, bergamot is used to supposed to be used to heal grief, and they actually found that it actually stabilized heart rate and reduced anxiety levels in people in scientific studies. Sometimes you don't actually have to have the actual uh, neural response, but just belief that a particular smell is going to be calming for you, or belief that a particular smell is harmful for you. Just thinking that can have elicit a physiological response in you. So if I told you right from when you were growing up, oh, this particular herb is going to calm you down. Why don't you have a lavender pillow that's going to allow you to have sweet dreams? So right from a young age, if I'm constantly like telling you about something, then maybe just that belief in it is enough for you to elicit a physiological response where you're toning down your heart rate, you're kind of relaxing your muscles, and therefore you feel calm, even though there's no actual changes going on in your brain in terms of that particular herb affecting it. This can also be something very personal. So, how you're grown up, what kind of smells associate with different things, or even cultural, right? So, certain things in some cultures, which is some considered to be a delicacy or something that's super beautiful or smell, whereas in other cultures that could be considered to be just abhorrent almost. Like the smell of, for example, for me, on a personal level, I've mentioned this before. I think that the smell of roses is, for a lot of people, is the most romantic smell, and for me, it's a very cloying, almost sickly sweet smell, which smells like funerals because I associate a lot of Indian funerals with the roses. So it's a lot of personal and cultural connotations associated with smells and where they transport you. Um on another plane, we talked about herbs being inhaled and affecting your olfactory system, and also herbs serving as just a belief in it might affect how you think about it. But also just visual connotations as well. For example, in a lot of home rituals in India, we use mango leaves to kind of decorate the entrances to the house, or banana leaves and banana trees almost are used to kind of tie it up in entrances to weddings. So the minute you see that um that particular plant, you almost immediately are like saying, oh, wedding's happening, or celebration is happening, or some kind of a big event is happening, or some kind of prayer is happening. So your brain automatically starts associating those particular symbols of herbs and plants with a particular ritual that's going on. So you can kind of test this out in terms of how herbs affect you by doing a very simple exercise. What I would ask you to do is work with a friend and ask them to pick, say, two or three herbs and go to the store and buy some little sacks and ask them to put the herbs in different sacks. And don't ask them to tell you what the herbs are. Just you can label them A, B, C, and D if you like, and then just without looking inside, just smell them and see what does it make you feel? Does it make that particular sack make you feel happy? Does it make you feel calm? Does it make you feel grounded? And so on. And take notes. And then go back and ask your friend as to what each herb was. And then that might help you kind of identify what kind of smells allow you to move into a specific kind of brain space. Which one is going to be best for you when you're meditating? Which one is going to be best for you when you want to indulge in healing magic, and so on. So that is a good way for you to kind of think about it. Another way for you to also think is, if instead of just giving you a bag which is anonymized, ask them to label it with their own sense of, this bag is going to bring you calmness, or this bag is going to bring you happiness, and so on. And then see if kind of nudging you along in a particular direction is allowing you to associate that particular herb or smell with that particular feeling, and how much of that word association is something that you really seek. because some of us respond to those kinds of word associations, whereas others don't. So whether the smell is much more potent as opposed to the words associated with it is something that you can figure out if you practice that particular exercise. And of course, no discussion about plants and herbs and brain changes can be complete without thinking about consumption, right? So there are so many herbs that people use in order to move into a different plane and transcend. And I took a yoga theory class, and there's a whole concept of uh, there are different planes of existence. There's a physical plane of existence, and then there is the mental plane of existence, the manomayam, and then there is the vijnanamayam, where there's like all the mysteries and stuff that's of the universe are being answered. And then finally, there's bliss anandamayam, which is where you can find that euphoric state of bliss. And the goal is to reach that euphoric stage without completely losing your mind, where you still have a tether to the physical plane that you can reach that euphoric stage and then come back. But we are mostly pretty much always in the physical plane and the mental plane, the manomayam. And one way in which we can transcend and move into the higher orders is by doing yoga, which is kind of to bind the physical body to control that, and then using mantras to kind of jump. Mantra means manyatrayate, so in the sense that you are trying to jump from the mind to the next level. So, and mantras are a conduit for you to kind of chant and get to the higher planes of existence. But there's a shortcut you can employ, and that is by consuming psychedelic drugs like marijuana or mushrooms or bhang or whatever you may call it. And the yogic practitioners say, yes, this is a shortcut. It's available. You can actually use it. In fact, there's a whole sect of people who believe that that's one way to kind of attain bliss and understand what that blissful state is about. But they also say be careful about what secrets or what you will learn, because you might not be physically and mentally prepared to receive all that information. So when you are using psychedelics, be aware that you might be getting more than you bargained for, but it is a valid route there for all of us. And so the psychedelics come in different mushrooms have this ingredient called psilocybin, which is very potent. And only recently have we started really looking into this active ingredient, psilocybin. And it is supposed to act on serotonin receptors, which again, we just spoke about, is a part of the happiness or mood enhancing circuits. One thing that they talk about is we have a network called the default mode network, which is again called a network because it's a distributed set of brain areas. Some of it is up here, and some of it is if you run your palm along the curvature of your skull. Some of it is up kind of on top of your skull if you kind of go down a little bit. So both in the frontal areas of your brain and also in the parietal areas and on the sides, the lateral sides. And this default mode network is supposed to be mainly about thinking about yourself, your ego, and it's supposed to relax when you are taking some of these psychedelics or mind altering drugs, that you're forming connections between other parts of the brain which are normally not connected because your default mode network is constantly thinking about you all the time. So when you kind of quieten that down, you're allowing connections across paths which are not usually forming those connections. So, and that's when you start seeing, oh my God, insights and truths that come out, because normally parts of the brain that are disconnected are forming those connections, at least in the moment of your trip. The other thing that is highlighted when you are taking some of these hallucinogenic herbs is your thalamus. Your thalamus is kind of your midbrain, and it is the relay hub. So pretty much every connection that's going from your external stuff into your brain, into your for processing, and also going out is being routed through the thalamus. And if you change the activation of the thalamus, then you are also changing what kind of sensations are coming in and how different sensory modalities are being tied together. And so this is something that they say that when you're having the transcendental experience using hallucinogenic drugs, the thalamus with its sensation conduits is also being activated. And this results in that enhanced perception that some of us feel when we imbibe these kinds of drugs. So herbs are a really potent way for you to set the stage for magic, either for grounding or for transporting yourself into that space where you can engage with your rituals or your practices or the objects around you. And you can either smell it or use belief systems to kind of help you enjoy the potency of a particular herb. Or of course, there's also the ability to consume it and then use those activations as well. So that brings us to an end to this particular episode. So thank you so much for joining me again. You can follow me on Instagram at Siddbits, SIDDBITS, or YouTube at Brain Mystic. Subscribe to this podcast, Neural Magic Podcast, and join the mailing list. The Neuroscience of Tarot is the book from Llewellyn that's out already now. And the Neuroscience of Magic is coming out in fall 26. And for more information, go to www.brainmystic.com or siddharthramakrishnan.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Bye.